Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e and I want to talk about dragons. In particular, I'm going to just specify one dragon, that is the Red Dragon Lair, and we're going to look at an encounter. How do you build yourself a Red Dragon Lair encounter and make it really awesome? Because that's what you want to do, is you want an awesome Red Dragon Lair encounter that your players remember for a very long time. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at the adult or ancient Red Dragon on page 97 and right through to about 93 of the monster manual, and you'll find there's a whole lot of information on the Red Dragon. This is your first stop. It actually gives you pretty much all the information you need to build your encounter and make it look really impressive. My first suggestion to you is pick a location that has a volcano, magma, mountain, cavern, but volcanic in some way is the way to go. There are regional effects that can lead up to reaching the Red Dragon Lair, so you don't have to play out exactly just move them to the lair and that's it. You can have a few things happen along the way. So small earthquakes, usually those will occur about 6 miles from the lair, so you can have them taking place. Now they only really they're not really necessarily going to have a major effect on your game unless you want to sort of tie in that there's some other creature involved that's sort of been woken up by this constant shaking, maybe something that lives below the ground such as a worm or earth elementals. Then there's also warm and sulfur tainted water, so all the water within about 1 mile is going to be tainted by this warm tinge and also the sulfur smell and taste. You could also have portals opening up from the elemental plane of fire, so that means that's usually going to happen about pretty close to the lair, about 1 mile, and that means you can have pretty much anything from the elemental plane of fire come out. So fire elementals, salamanders, anything that is sort of related in some way to fire and has fire immunity, because that's really the key thing, otherwise it doesn't make any sense, right? So here is my scene. I have presented you, this is my Red Dragon Lair. I'm using a map that I've just recently got, and I've got the party over here who have sort of tried to spread themselves out. We've got the main treasure pile over here. We've got our main red dragon here who's flying around, and of course would normally be curled up on its pile of treasure, but it's currently, we're going to it's flying. I picked one that's flying because when you have a dragon encounter, really your dragon should be flying. Now you might be wondering, what am I doing with these little fellows over here? These are fire drakes. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, hang on, Fred. Those little things that you're showing to us, these fire drakes, there's no such thing in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I don't think there's nothing in the monster manual. There's nothing in the books that have been released. So how do I use a fire drake if I don't have a stat block? Well, because I'm going to make a fire drake and I'm going to make sure you get access to it in some way. So don't worry about that. The fire drake is coming later. Alright, so what are we going to do with our dragon? One of the things with regard to the regional effects is that should the dragon die, which should not be happening, you should never be having your dragon sort of fight to the death. They are smart, they will fly away, they're not sort of going to be that easy to polish off. There's a reason why dragons live a long time, right? So why would you do that to the dragon? When a dragon dies though, the effects, the regional effect will fade after 1d10 or 1 10-sided dice worth of days. So it takes a long time for that effect to dissipate completely, and all you have to do is you just roll your 10-sided dice to make that happen. Okay, now Leer Actions. Those are really important for your environment, right? The thing with your Leer action is always going to go on initiative 20. It doesn't matter, you don't roll a dice for it or anything like that, it's just set at 20. And it's deliberately set at 20 so that the creatures that you are contending with are probably not necessarily going to get to go first. Because at high level, you're dealing with high level play now, you're not dealing with low-level play. What we want to do is make sure that the area, the Leer Actions, actually get a chance to go into effect. So that's why they are initiative 20. Now, if your dragon has a lower initiative than 20, you still use the Leer Action at 20. Okay? All right. Okay. Now, and I know a lot of people will be saying, what about if the player's characters have surprise on the dragon? Really? Do you really think that's going to happen? It shouldn't really be happening. I mean, considering that this creature has the kinds of senses and perception and would have a network of little spies, such as our fire drakes, keeping an eye on the location, they will be telling the dragon all sorts of information. Therefore, there is no sneaking up on a red dragon lair. If you thought you could do that, you might be able to teleport into that location, but then again, getting surprised is a completely different thing. Okay, so what can you use with the Leer Actions on Initiative 20? Well, there are things such as Magma Eruptions. So a Magma Eruption or a geyser can sort of shoot out. It's sort of represented by something like this on the map. Those are pretty good. There's the Tremor Shake option. I don't like this. I think it's honestly a very weak effect, and all it's really going to do is knock the creatures prone, which of course all they're going to do is stand up later on. So there's really not much point in using that one. You can't use the same Leer action twice in a row, so you have to change things around. My suggestion is you go with the Volcanic Gas Cloud, and you bounce back and forth between the Volcanic Gas Cloud and the Magma Eruptions in those geysers. Now, the Volcanic Gas Cloud, basically this thing is going to obscure vision and cause your players to have to make constitution checks. The actual book itself sort of talks a little bit about sort of how they work, so I'll discuss them very, very briefly. So your Magma Eruption, this is the one that I think is probably one of the more fun ones to use. It is dexterity based, so and the DCs on these are quite low. So when you're dealing with player characters at high level, they would normally find most saving throws DC 15 quite easy still. So Magma Eruptions, from a point on the ground, the dragon can see within 120 feet of it, the creature creates like a 20-foot high, 10-foot radius geyser. So that's sort of shooting straight up. Each creature in the geyser's area must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw or take 21, that's the average, or you roll six-sided dice, fire damage. On a failed save, you take half as much. So that's the one I would go with. And then there's the volcanic gas forming a cloud in a 20-foot radius sphere surrounding a point that the dragon can see within 120 feet of it. The sphere spreads around corners, so that's always good. And in its area, it's lightly obscured, so it's going to restrict vision, and it lasts until the initiative starts, until initiative count 20 on the next round. So it's lasting the entire round, which is really, really good. Each creature starting in its turn in the cloud must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned until the end of its turn. While poisoned in this way, the creature is incapacitated. Incapacitated, if you didn't know, is really bad. So it's a really good feature. So bouncing between those two Leer actions is a smart move. Those are the ones that I would recommend to you when you're running your red dragon, your adult red dragon, or your ancient red dragon. Okay, so we're not finished there though, right? There's more to it. There's quite a lot going on. When you come to a battle like this is like a boss fight. So don't forget the red dragon also has legendary resistances. So that's when you get to pass a saving throw. You get about 3 of those. I believe it's 3 for the adult red dragon. Yes, 3 per day. So make sure to use those. Your players will probably know that you do have them, and so they'll be trying to figure out the best way to deal with that by burning through some spells to sort of force the dragon to use them up. You also have legendary actions, and legendary actions are great, but they can also be a bit of a trap. One of the things I found is, there's always the desire to try and make sure you use all of your legendary actions every single round to make sure you've used them all up. And that's quite difficult if you don't want to stick your dragon on the ground or up too close. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a reason why this dragon that I've selected is flying. It's actually sort of sitting on a post, but whenever you start dealing with your players, and it should be definitely flying around, okay? You do not want this dragon to be attacking them in such a way that it is on the ground. So dragons always should be flying. It's very hard to get surprised on them, and that will make all of those characters who built melee-based characters who can do things like Divine Smite up close, that'll render them sort of less effective. It'll also sort of shut down a lot of the rogues' attacks to make them a little bit more difficult to deal with. They won't be able to get, usually unless they've got somebody flying, they won't have somebody within 5 feet, and they probably won't have, by most recollections, you're probably not going to have advantage by being hidden, because there won't be enough locations to be able to hide in. So therefore unlikely to happen. And it's actually incredibly difficult to hide from a dragon, because being invisible won't help you, just because of the types of senses they have. Made that mistake before, trust me, it was not fun. Your main weapon for your dragon is your fire breath. That's the one you want to keep using as much as you can. If it doesn't recharge, you do have other options, but it's the way you use them. So if you don't get your fire breath to recharge so you can breathe all over the characters and make them suffer, then you will have to fall back on the multi-attack. That's the Frightful Presence and the melee attacks. Use those in the air. Don't land and then use those. That's not the way you want to do this. The dragon is either hovering or flying. And really what you want to do is keep the dragon moving. Don't leave it in one place so that somebody can start thinking about, well, if I leave it, if he stays there, then I can do this, and as long as it's within reach, I'm all good. Because that's what's going to start happening, is they'll start figuring out how to use spells to pretty much bring the dragon down. And they won't necessarily be trying to go after hit points. What they'll be trying to do is shut down the dragon's fly speed, so it's got no speed, so it is forced to land. And that is a bad thing for any dragon. So when you're flying in, if you don't have your flaming breath, what you want to do is you want to target one character. If you get away with getting one character, that's great. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to grapple that creature. By all means, use the Frightful Presence on everybody. That's good. Okay? If it works, great. But you want to grapple them. You will then pick them up off the ground, fly up, 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 and then drop them. Remember, dropping is not an action. So you can do that, not a problem. There's no reason why you can't get quite a bit of altitude. Remember, these dragons, they fly a long way. Okay? You have a speed, I believe it's 80 feet. So you can fly 80 feet straight up if you wanted to. And you can also go diagonally, straight up, to go up 80 feet and away 80 feet if you really wanted to. And then drop them. Where do you drop them? In a big hole. Or where do you drop them? Into a pool of magma or lava. Those are the places you want to put them in. Use your environment to your advantage. I'm going to be in so much trouble for doing this video. I can see it right now. Okay, so what about things like legendary actions? Because I started talking about legendary actions and some of the things that can cause problems, right? So first off, the detect ability is not really super helpful unless there is somebody within the group who's managed to be not detected by the dragon, which, as I said, is really unlikely. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually the dragon will know that you are there. And as a result, having to use that feature, I've almost never used the detect feature as a legendary action, and it's kind of a waste, unfortunately. What I did find is that the wing attack burns up 2 legendary actions, and it's a bit of a red herring. It actually doesn't do exactly what I need it to do. It actually puts me at a huge disadvantage. By using that, I've now just halved my speed, and I've made things actually more difficult for myself. It doesn't really affect that many people or characters because they will be spreading out, remember. They're not going to be putting themselves too close together. So, but it's the tail attack. If you can get the tail attack in, that's great. But, as I've said, if you can't get those attacks in, don't worry about it. It's really not important. What you're trying to do is buy time for the dragon to recharge on the fire breath. Now it recharges at the very beginning of the turn, and you roll a 6-sided dice, and if you get a 5 or a 6, you can use it again. So if you roll that 6-sided dice and you get that number, you're all good. I rolled a 2, so I'd have to wait another round. So you fall back on the second strategy that I just talked about. So those are that's my advice for you with regard to the red dragon. Okay, so that's the fighting techniques. Now remember, the tail attack is 15 feet, so you've got a reach of 15 feet. So there's a good chance, if you are still within reach of somebody, that you'll be able to get that attack in. So absolutely use it if you can, but don't worry if you can't. Now don't focus on trying to use all of them every single round. Now I did talk about that briefly, didn't I? Okay, so what about minions? I'm going to move our dragon and just fly him a little bit further out of the way. So we'll put him sort of over here for now. Actually, I don't want to put him over here. I want to put him about there. And I'm going to talk about minions, because minions are really important. Minions with a solo creature make all the difference. Solo creatures in Dungeons and Dragons never work well. In fact, they work very poorly. So as a result, you have to come up with a better solution for dealing with that problem. So my minion is the fire drake. I am creating the fire drake. And look, what you want is a fire drake that's immune to fire. Otherwise, the fire drake makes no sense. I want the drake to have a bite. It's going to have 1 hit point. I'm not worried about it living past the first blow. So I'm using it like a minion from Dungeons and Dragons 4e. Give it not a huge armor class, because really all it's trying to do is burn up and keep the player's characters occupied, so the dragon gets time to recharge its fire breath and breathe again. That's what their job is. They are there to help protect the main dragon. Give it a fire spit. So spitting fire is good too for the fire drake. So something like that. Now it doesn't have to be a long range. 30 feet is more than adequate, because remember, a creature like this should be able to move fairly quickly. I would say 30 feet is pretty slow for something like a fire drake. So anything between 35 feet to 40 feet seems reasonable, particularly if it's moving over terrain that it is used to. Whether you decide that it can move across a lava pool or a magma pool without suffering difficult terrain is completely up to you. I haven't really decided yet exactly whether that will be my focus. So, fire drakes. Now, what about environments? This environment actually includes what are razor sharp spikes, and they're going to do 1d12 points of damage. So you stand in that location. There's not going to be a save, because there's nothing to save from. You can't stand between them or anything like that. If you stand in that location, you just take 1d12. So every time you step in a square with those spikes, it's another 12-sided dice worth of damage, which is bad, right? You don't want to be doing that sort of damage to yourself. It's also difficult terrain. So over here, I don't know if I can find you a spot. So over here, you'll see there's a spot just over here where there's a space between the magma. Now the magma is almost formed like a moat. This is exactly what you want. So what a dragon would do is would dig out a passageway and form a pathway that leads into some sort of moat-like location. It's like putting a moat around a castle, right? You do the same thing with your dragon. But over here are spikes. These spikes are going to do 1d12 or 12 points of damage, and difficult terrain. And this will stop people from trying to get up close and get into the center, maybe grab some treasure and then disappear. It makes it a little bit more difficult. Unless, of course, they've got things like Misty Step and Teleport, which they probably will at a particular point anyway. But it just makes the environment a bit more interesting. You can put them in different locations. I've got some anywhere else here on this map. I don't think you can necessarily see them, but I've pointed out those. Okay, so that's one environmental hazard that you can include. What about things like magma pools? Well, we've got our magma lake here, or not lake, more like a river. There's some pools over here, and pulling magma or lava over here. So this is going to cause a lot of damage. You don't want to be standing in this stuff. And I haven't actually specified how much damage it will do. I was actually looking through the Dungeons and Dragons or Dungeon Master Guide, trying to find the page number for where you can find how much damage you do if you fall into lava. I don't think you're necessarily actually falling into lava, and moving across lava, usually you don't sink straight away, but you would certainly suffer a significant amount of damage. I don't think there's too many people who study volcanoes that are still alive nowadays. It's a very dangerous activity. Okay, I'll let you figure out how much damage you want that to make. Okay, what about deep pits for the flame drakes to live in? This is where our drakes are going to pop out of. So over here there's a hole. There's a hole over here, a hole here. You could say that these are like walls or blocks, but no. Really, you don't want a section that's got a whole lot of things in the way that make it difficult for your dragon to fly around. So we don't want to do that at all. So avoid that. These are going to be pits or holes where the drakes can clamber out of. How are we going to use our mechanic with our drakes, our fire drakes? Well, I think the simplest way, and the way that I'm going to suggest to you, is we're going to use a counter. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Hank, he's done a channel, he does all sorts of things, he's very good at it, and I'm going to suggest you use either a 4-sided dice or a 6-sided dice each round. Now, you can decide that each round is too much, and you're going to roll that each round, and that will determine how many drakes come out of the holes. This is to keep the minions going. We don't want all the minions to be destroyed. We want them to keep coming every round and burn up their resources. Okay, I don't really want to have more than about 6 minions on the table. So if you roll and you find you've already got quite a few fire drakes or minions available, then don't put out any more. Just keep replenishing the number to 6 each round as it comes around to have your turn with your dragon. There's no reason why you can't do that. Also, you can probably smart to have a different initiative for your red dragon and for your fire drakes, and of course your Leer will have its own initiative at 20. Okay, so those are the minions. What about things like steam vents? Now this is what I would call a steam vent. Over here is a steam vent. Now steam vent is going to do fire damage because it's hot and it's an area. So it's not only is it going to obscure your vision when you're in there and probably provide you with a little bit of cover, not very useful unfortunately against something like a red dragon, but it's also going to cook you. These are places you don't want to be standing. So you've got a lot of different hazards going on to make the environment and the encounter far more interesting. Also, remember, some of these holes can be quite deep. They may not be where a fire drake comes out of. They might actually be so deep that you fall into them and take quite a lot of bludgeoning damage when you hit the bottom. Unless, of course, your dungeon master says, yes, it's all right, you can grab hold of the sides and save yourself from certain death. So I thought this was a nice way of sort of presenting how you might run a red dragon lair and encounter. And I really wanted to sort of point those sorts of things out and sort of show you visually. I really like that sort of style. So if you have any questions and feedback, use the comment section right now. I have many videos for players and dungeon masters that you're welcome to go and check out if you want to. I'm certainly sure you'll find something interesting in there. These are covering everything from rules to just general advice, and I also have some sort of character videos as well where I talk about different NPCs and so forth. I have a Patreon page if you want to help support my channel so I keep doing more videos like this. I also have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online from basically Amazon and the book depository. And this map is actually from the Dungeons and Dragons Tactical Maps Reincarnated pack, which I did a review on not so long ago. So if you're wondering where that map came from, that's where it is from. Okay, so make sure to share, like and subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, and I go live quite a lot. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And if I can find a 20-sided dice, there it is. There's my 20. And I didn't roll a 20, I rolled a 1, I just pushed it onto the 9.